We want the truth, so watch Truth Wanted live Fridays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTW and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/calltw.
So you think that you can tell us how to live our lives, never questioning the source from which your moral code derives. You think that suffering is part of some great plan that's been devised. I wonder, what will it take for you to start opening your eyes? I wonder.
Hello, everybody. How's everything going out there? I hope everyone's having a wonderful Sunday. How you doing, Kenneth?
I'm doing well. I can't wait to get to some calls today.
Yeah, me too. And it looks like this time we can see the forest for the trees.
Yeah. Look at the trees. Look at them.
Look at the trees. Yeah, the trees are there. We can definitely see them. So let's hope we've got some good calls this week. You know what? Let's start off the bat with Kevin in Florida, who says that God knows more than we do, so it doesn't make sense to question him. Kevin, how do you know that God even exists, much less knows more than we do?
Well, I really was having struggles with the call screener to come up what I really wanted to talk about. And I just have two sides to this. One, I think you guys would agree with, and the other, I called to just get your perspective. So if you could just give me a couple of seconds to explain.
You've got 1 minute.
Okay.
You got 1 minute.
Let's just say theoretically, God is real, and we're living in a world where we do believe that. You and me and the other gentleman on the line. I compare that to me, and I have two kids, two boys, my sons. And there's a lot of things, a lot of times that as their father, I have them do that they like and things that they don't like. Me being 28 years old, them being 6 and 7, I don't understand how we could ever be on the same page. Sometimes in my home, I have to play good cop, bad cop with their mom when I'm doing things that I know they're going to have a problem with, but I'm doing it because I love them. I'm doing it because I know, I've done it before. I've seen what they're going to go through, but I don't spend a lot of time with some things explaining this to my 6 and 7-year-old kid, because I think it wouldn't make any sense to even act like they're going to follow me on certain things. So that's what my question is. If there is an all-knowing, all-powerful creator being, how do we expect to make sense of the things that he has done or would ask us to do? I just want to get your retort on that.
Yeah. So first of all, your analogy falls apart. For instance, my dad would be a complete idiot to try and tell me what to do when it comes to computers, because I've been a software engineer for now over 30 years. So yeah, when I was 5, did my dad know more than I did? Yeah. When I was 16, did he know more about technology than I did? No. Did he know more about other life issues? Yes. Does he know more about my life and the decisions I've made and whether they were good or bad now? No. So that's the problem with your analogy, right? As we grow as human beings, we develop different interests, and those interests leads to different expertise in different areas. And my dad is barely keeping up with the modern world, and so his opinion on the modern world is becoming less and less valuable because he's less and less engaged with it. And so all these things are true things. When it comes to God, you're having us make an assumption, and the answer to that would be, I would expect a God to be able to see the reason behind what he's telling us to do and not do. And let's just pick the LGBTQIA question, right? And it's not really a question, it's just fact. There's nothing about the Bible that is factually true on this case. Because we know, you just take a look at some of the stuff that we know for a fact. We don't even have to go into all of the science behind it, but just the fact that they're intersex people tells us that if you go and say, well, God created Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, well, he also created people who have both sets of genitalia. He also created people women who have testosterone levels that you normally see in the average man, and things like this. And we just take a look at the biology around us and see that everything he's told us makes no sense. We could look at something like Leviticus 14, which tells us how to cleanse defiling skin diseases, and realize that that doesn't work at all for anything. I mean, you're cleaning yourself off and you're shaving everything off, so that might help in some certain situations, but it's not going to solve most of the skin diseases we're aware of. And yet the Bible claims this is the case. God says things like, "Thou shalt not tell a lie." But here's my question for you on this one: is telling a lie to save someone else's life okay? And where do you get that out of the Bible? Right?
You don't. And you mind if I respond to that really quick?
Yeah.
Any modern day human being would have issues with the Bible and some of the things that God asked us to do. I think we can all agree on that, right? Even I feel like anybody that has strong faith should still have some issues with what is said in there. The only difference I would say is when you use the example with your dad is, if we're theoretically speaking talking, your dad is not a all-powerful, all-knowing being. So we're assuming that that person or whomever, whatever we want to call him, in that book is real. I don't think there would be any drawback as it would be with your father. I think he would know everything.
No, my point is that as we grow, we change, and our knowledge bases change. And you have to keep up with that. That God knows everything isn't really kind of the point. And knowing everything, I've got issues with that anyway. But I think it's mostly about we change as we grow. And so what was good for me when I was 16 is no longer good for me. And that changes, right? And that changes because I am my own person. I am an individual, and I have some degree of free will, and that's a whole different debate I don't want to go into. But that's basically what I was trying to say with that, is we change as we grow, and what was good for us before is no longer good for us now.
Kevin, do you believe in a particular, is there a particular God that you like, that you personally believe in or that you are advocating for?
Sure, Yeshua, Jesus, Christianity, I would say, more Judaism, but
let me take a stab at the question that I thought I heard you asking, which was, how do we as human beings make like evaluations and assessments about gods, right? As finite beings, how do we make assessments about these allegedly infinite beings? And what I want to draw your attention to is that there are theists of all stripes will make claims about the attributes that their gods have, that the gods that they believe in have. And the simple answer to your question is that we would use the same exact tools that we would use to evaluate claims about anyone with respect to these gods. Like if somebody was to say about, like, say my parents, for example, if someone was to tell me, hey, I think that your dad has, like brown hair. I could use the tools of reason and critical thinking and logic and skepticism and all that shit to look at my dad and go, does my dad have brown hair? Is that claim consistent with reality? And we would do the same thing with respect to any claims people are making about the attributes, the desires, etc., of any given god. So yeah. And we can approach this from two different directions too, because there is this underlying question of, does God exist? So we can go down that route, or we can be like, okay, well, does this book say God is this way? And we could evaluate the same way that we could evaluate any other work of fiction talking about any other character.
So I'm definitely not going to take up too much more of your time. I want to wrap up, I guess, what my punchline is to this whole thing is what I was going for was, obviously there's a lot of things in the Bible, a lot of things that God has asked people to do that I myself would never do or would tell.
There's a lot of things that books
like
does.
I said, right. And like I said, any modern day human being or believer would have a problem with it, I believe, and I guess they should. But I guess my punchline to this, what I'm getting at here is, beyond the existence, does it make sense to say, if I tell my son, no, you can't come home, not take out the trash, not do what your mom has asked you to do, and play Fortnite with your buddy for 7 hours, when his buddy says, well, my mom lets me play all day and lets me do whatever I want to. And he comes home and he's like, Dad, why are you so mean to me? Why does Kingsley get to do this, that, and the other? my point is that because I'm his father, and I think any decent father would understand where I'm coming from. The point is, he's never going to see it my way. He can't use any reasoning.
This is like saying, how can any of us who don't have Sith Jedi powers evaluate the actions of Darth Vader?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't have to.
what you just said
I don't
is
have to be
true.
force sensitive to
Right.
question Darth Vader.
And I think my
What you
response
just
to that
said
is
was
going to
true,
be, but my response to that would be, what you should be doing is helping your son to develop a framework to make good decisions.
Yeah.
And not just blindly follow rules, which, I mean, blindly following rules can get you into trouble. And that's part of the problem with a lot of God's so-called rules. They will get you into trouble. If you take, and you didn't answer this question, I'd like to get back to it. If you take thou shalt not lie and follow that exactly, and you're in a situation where if you tell a lie, you can save a life. If you tell the truth, they will die. What do you do?
Yes, I would tell the lie. I would tell.
Right.
And
you'd break the commandment, right? And that's the problem with the rule, because the rule does not give you conditions. It doesn't set up a goal for you to try and measure your actions by. The goal is do this, go to heaven, do this, go to hell. That's all you've got. You have no if statements. It's all do. Yeah. Right. That's what rules are. That's what rule following is. Do this, do this, do this. Right. It's why you do it. And it's why when you're cooking, you follow a recipe. Do this, do this, do this. You end up with a cake. Right. And that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to end up at something that actually makes sense. And I don't know what God's goal is. Right. My personal goal is human happiness, happiness of the entire population of humanity as a whole. And I can judge my actions against that goal. But I don't know what God's only purpose seems to be worshipped. Those are the first three commandments, right?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. I mean, God seems to be a narcissist. He wants to be worshipped. That's his goal. Anything that doesn't get you, that doesn't move you closer to that goal is bad. Anything that moves you away from that goal is, or excuse me, vice versa. Anything that moves you away from that goal is bad. Anything that moves you closer to that goal is good. He just wants to be worshipped. He doesn't care about good or evil.
Okay, and now there's just one more thing. There was something you said I should be developing a framework for my son to make good decisions. Agree. And there's many times where we do sit down and we have conversations, and I've explained to him about many things. Listen, this is why this is the way it is, and this is why it has to be. And there are many times where he understands, and I see him making better decisions. What I want you guys to really pretty much say, I agree or disagree on, and I'm fine with either answer. That's why I wanted the response isn't there going to be things, no matter what I say, that there's no way he's going to understand?
Well, that's a you problem, not your son problem. You, as the communicator, are responsible for making sure what you're attempting to communicate is understood by the receiver on the other end. So are there things that you're not going to be able to communicate, that you're never going to be good enough to communicate? Sure, we're human. That's just the way life is. Does that have anything to do with anything else? No. You just need to recognize that sometimes you're not going to be able to express it in such a way that your son understands it, but somebody else might be.
Well, and I would just say no. Because, I mean, your son, as they grow, as they, mature, as they gain an understanding of the world, they'll understand that there are reasons behind why you would say the things that you say. They might not get it right away, but they can learn. Mm-hmm. And even, I mean, with some people and their parents, sometimes the answer is just, mom or dad's a little fucked up. That's why they told me to do this thing. I mean, they can get it. They can gain an understanding of your reasons. So again, to try to act like this is analogous to like the character of a god, it might be more analogous than you think, in fact, because if you were to read the Bible and just look at the character of Yahweh like you would any other character in any other work of fiction, you can think about it like you would if you were thinking about Darth Vader or Voldemort or somebody, and you can be like, all right, what are the underlying motivations of this character? And Jim's nailing it. It's worship. That is first and foremost, that is the purpose of creation in scripture, in the Bible, is to worship God, to bring glory to God. That's it. So we can look at this and go, okay, well, what does this say about this supposed God that's posited here, and make assessments about it like we would any other character.
Okay. Listen, guys, I agree with you. The only thing that anybody has said that I disagree with, and I'm not trying to spark up another part of the conversation. You guys have got other calls. I agree what you're saying. The only thing that I disagree with is when Jim just said that would be a me problem. I think majority of us know that there's a developmental stage with a child, like you said, and they learn and they grow. But my son being 7, there's no way, Jim, that it's all me if there's certain things he cannot comprehend.
Well,
he has to be at a certain point to have
you
that
missed. Yeah, you shortened what I said way too much. I said it's a you problem. There are times when you're not going to be good enough to explain it. That's being human. So yes, there are going to be times when you can't explain a concept to somebody, right? And you can explain concepts very simply, and you can give them a very surface level understanding of how things work. We do this all the time in school, especially with science. The science you learn in high school, the same set of classes that you learn in college are going to be different and more in depth. And some what you learned in high school is going to be, yeah, that's mostly correct, except under all these circumstances, or that's just a good stopping point for that topic, and we're going to go into more in depth here. So you can explain it to a degree to anybody, and there's always a communication problem, right? We're not good communicators across the spectrum, and times it's going to be. Communication is much more complicated than we give it credit for. Yeah. So that's the entire thing on it. It's a you problem because you're communicating and you're responsible for the message, but it's also sometimes you're just not going to be good enough.
Notice, though, also that you don't have the benefit of, like, the God that you find in the Bible is supposed to be all-powerful and all-knowing and desires a relationship with his creation. So if that God wanted to create the creation in such a way that that creation could comprehend his goals and what he wants and all this stuff, could have done it. Mm-hmm. Could have made it plain and skipped all the games.
Yeah. And that's also why good teachers are so valuable.
And I'm definitely heading out after this, but to respond to you, that's just me circling around to the point I agree with you. Why didn't he just give me all the answers? But I'm not sure, like my son, why he wouldn't give us all the answers. Like, I don't know.
We never said give us all the answers. What we said was give us a framework in which to discover the answers.
Capacity.
Right. And we found a framework, we call it science, or the scientific method, that gets us as close to the truth as we can possibly get, that works nearly every time it's tried. And yet faith doesn't work every time it's tried, right? And so we have a framework, and that framework seems to indicate that the likelihood of a God is very, very low, so low that it might as well be zero. And I'm not saying it is zero, I'm just saying it's close to zero. So that's part of the problem, right? He didn't give us the scientific method.
Yeah, we had to come up with
I got you. Guys, I appreciate it. I needed a different perspective about it. And I think, I got a lot of good information out of this. And I hope you guys understood my bottom line.
Yeah.
Think so? Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah. Take it easy. Have a good one.
All right. Well, before we get on to the next call, let me do an announcement or two here. So the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, which is a 501c3 organization dedicated to the promotion of positive atheist culture and the separation of religion and government. Seems like a good idea, right? If you like what we do, right? If you like what we do and you'd like to support us, here are some ways to support the Atheist Experience and the ACA. First, you could become a member for as little as 99 cents a month. Click the join button below the video. And as a bonus, this will give you access to special chat emojis. Come on now. The Atheist Experience is just one of the shows put on by the ACA. Make sure to check out our other shows as well. Secular Sexuality on Thursdays, starting at 7 p.m. Central. Truth Wanted airs live Fridays at 7. And then we have our Sunday shows, Talk Heathen, which is at 1 o'clock Central, and the nonprofits, which is on right before this show at 3 p.m. Central. Finally, you can support us on Patreon if you'd like. Find us over at tiny.cc/Patreon AXP. And with that, Jim, who do you like next?
I think Mark is there in Kentucky, who
yeah.
says that he has a story that proves God. I'm much more interested in evidence than stories. So what's your evidence? Marcus?
More interested in evidence. If you're more interested in evidence and stories, then I've got nothing to give you.
Okay, so why should we accept your story as true?
Yeah.
Because it is mythical, and it all happened a long time ago. Would you like to go back with me, or would you like to pass me on?
It's mythical. There's lots of myths, right? We've got the myths of Zeus and Hercules, and Native Americans have myths, and the Chinese have myths. Everybody has myths. How do you know your myth is true?
Oh, you just got to listen and follow along. I was never a part of the practice. I was too young. Let's go back. I was growing up in the Appalachian Mountains, West Virginia. You know, we was poor, didn't have much. I had 3 brothers and 2 sisters, you know, as before everything. My older brother, Tommy, he just regular old Daniel Boone. I always want to go kill and hunt things, you know, have little adventures in the forest. He always carried this sharpened stick, you know, he called it a spear hawk. That's what he called it, spear hawk. We hear Tommy running one day. It was around 6 o'clock. It was about time for supper. Running home screaming one day. A black bear was tailing Tommy on the way home. Black bears can run pretty fast, you know. And they tailed him all the way home from the woods. And by the time he got home, I seen it. Took one good swipe at him. Sliced him right in the throat. You know, we was poor, no hospitals around. Dad, he takes him up the hill. We got this little shack. You know, I never been to it. They just, you know, it's the healing. They call it the healing shack. Mama always used to use it before she passed on. Daddy took him up there for 3 days to a week, and just continuous prayer, cleaning of the wounds, all that. I guess, you know, he just wasn't awake. He was just there. But the body never did break down. And the last day that Poppy went up there, he came back with Tommy. And all he had to show was scars on his neck. And I don't follow Christianity, but seeing something like that happen from nothing, it makes you wonder, you know.
No, not really. I understand enough about science and face and neck wounds to know that they bleed like motherfuckers. And if the bear didn't actually cut the carotid, then the chances of bleeding out are pretty small. Being knocked out for a couple of days and put into a coma for just a couple of days, if it was a coma at all, and just not knocked out or sleeping, also isn't that unusual. I mean, did he get lucky? Sure. So, I mean, again, what examination of the wound? What examination of the wound was done? Because the head can flop back and look like it's been half cut off, and it really hasn't been. Taking the head off is actually harder than most people think. So how did you prove? Right.
Black bears can grow up to 4 to 5 inch claws on them. I've got a few.
Yeah, no, and I'm not debating that a black bear could definitely have done some damage, possibly even taken the head off. What I'm wondering is how much damage was actually done, because the black bear should have been able to outrun him and didn't. The black bear should have been able to do a lot more damage than he did. It sounded like the black bear was just goofing around and not really attempting to kill him to me, but I don't know. I'm not inside that black bear's head. But what we do know is that your brother didn't die. That he recovered after a couple of days, and so the question becomes, how bad was really the wound?
With no medical attention at all, just forced prayer.
Well,
but
so
again,
no medical attention. You're saying they didn't dress the wounds, they didn't try and stop the bleeding, but you said they cleaned the wounds, right? Cleaning the wounds is been around for thousands of years, known to help.
How
I
many
mean,
people
so
die in battle? How many people died in battle in World War II just because of improperly wounds?
exactly,
well,
yeah.
but in this instance, Marcus, what you're telling us is there you've got a young kid surviving an animal attack. All right, we don't know the specifics of the wound. We don't know anything. We know that the kid, if we're just taking your story at face value and being as charitable as possible, the kid is taken up into a shed for a few days and cared for and prayed over. We don't, and he recovers. Okay, that's it. Those are the facts. All right. We don't know how bad the wound was. We don't know what caused the recovery. We don't know anything. All we have is attack, recovery. We don't know how improbable it was. We can't make any assessments about it. But what it sounds like you're doing is saying, I can't explain this recovery, therefore it must be something supernatural. And that is a big old leap that you're making.
Right.
Wouldn't it kill any ordinary man
Pardon?
who wouldn't pray?
Who knows? He says, wouldn't it kill an ordinary man? Who knows?
Well, so again, I'm saying that a black bear is capable of killing most men, either caving in the chest, nearly taking the head off. They can do a lot of damage. The question we have is how much damage was actually done, right? Because remember, face wounds and neck wounds will bleed. Well, they bleed a lot. That's also a simple fact, right? And so a lot of blood in a face or neck wound doesn't necessarily mean that either the carotid or the jugular, the two main veins were cut. Doesn't mean that the trachea was cut or crushed or damaged. We just don't know what the damage level was.
And the bottom line,
I hate talking about it. I watched my brother's head nearly come off.
Well, another thing to think about is like how memory works, and and how things, how our memories can be sort of amplified and embellished over time. But the bottom line here is, in any instance where we do not have enough information to come to a conclusion about the causality of an event, the honest thing to do is just say, I don't know what happened. I'm happy that my brother got better. I don't know.
You run, go chase a damn black bear, let it cut your head off, and not pray and see if you live or die.
Well, the only way that experiment would actually work is if we took the exact same amount of damage from the exact same power of swipe, right? And it be in the exact same physical condition as your brother. Right. That's the only way that experiment would actually work.
Yeah. There's just not enough information. There's not enough information here to make some honest assessment here. And Jim and I won't do it. We won't start pretending to know things that we can't know. And it sounds like what you're comfortable doing is making those kinds of assumptions.
All right.
Yeah.
And saying I don't know, therefore God is bad thinking. It's fallacious logic. Yeah. It's I don't know and full stop. I just don't know. And while it is true that something is either natural or supernatural, it is not true that just because we can't prove it to be natural means it's automatically supernatural. We couldn't explain lightning 100, 200 years ago, so that was supernatural. Now we can't explain how lightning works. Not only can we explain it, we can control it and generate it, and so it's natural. So you have to prove it's supernatural, and just saying, well, this happened, we have a bunch of coincidental things happening. Coincidence is not causation. And so you've got to prove cause and effect. And you haven't done that yet because we don't know. If you had come and said, there was, his carotid artery, I know it was severed, I saw the sever, that would go a little bit farther. But they went to a healing shack where presumably they cleaned the wounds, they took care of him, rest, feeding, all that stuff. There wasn't nothing done, right? There was stuff being done to him that would help.
The Appalachian Healing Shack.
It doesn't.
It's just nothing of more than a fire, like a fireplace in the corner.
Right, but it still doesn't matter, Marcus.
Whatever remedies you would find in the hills. That's
great. It doesn't matter. The room could have been completely empty. It wouldn't matter. We don't have enough information to make any kind of judgment about this injury and how your brother got better. We're all just happy that he did get better. But like Jim said it. I mean, going from I don't know, therefore God that's a problem. Now, could it be possible that God intervened and saved your brother? I don't know. I don't have any reason to think so. But if that was the case, nothing that you're telling us is evidence that would support such a conclusion. Is the problem? So I would
die from it with that prayer.
Well, again, I mean, there's lots of studies out there about the effectiveness or lack thereof with respect to intercessory prayer, but spoiler alert, it does not work. But yeah, it sounds like you just need to. Well,
it worked that whole week for him.
Well, we understand that you're assigning cause and effect here to something that neither one of us are willing to assign cause and effect without more data. Again, you just haven't provided enough. A head can roll back pretty far when the muscles are loose.
Yeah.
How fatal is anything that occurs in the wilderness when you have no medical attention?
Depends on the injury, and you're not telling, and we don't have any way of assessing the injury. The bear could have barely scratched him, and it bled like crazy, like Jim was talking about. The bear could have damn near cut his head off. We don't know. So again,
depends on the injury and depends on the individual. I mean, there are people who've died from a broken arm, right? And from simple little things.
And there's lots of people who've been prayed over and not gotten better.
Yeah. I mean, there's a children's hospital with a cancer ward full of children who were being prayed over who it's not working for.
Yeah.
The way I see it, they live wrong in their past life and don't deserve it this life.
Well, now you're making another claim that there's such a thing as past lives. So I think we're going to leave it at one claim.
Yeah. Thanks for calling in, Marcus. But we're going to move on, man. I can't bear to continue this call, Jim.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think we've clawed all we can out of it. Thank you very much, Marcus. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
In the interim time here, hey, look, if you shop on Amazon, then you can support the ACA at no cost to you. Simply visit tiny.cc/Amazon Smile ACA and designate the Atheist Community of Austin as your selected charity. And Amazon, being the sweet people they are, will donate a portion of the profit directly to the ACA. That's pretty cool. We now have a channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. Visit tiny.cc/AEN podcasts. There you can just listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, the Nonprofits, all on one channel. We also have 3 Facebook groups that are run by fans for fans that you can interact with. In fact, you should interact with. The first is the Atheist Experience fan group at tiny.cc/FBAXP. There's also the Atheist Experience private fan group where you can interact with others without having those interactions appear on your public feed. You can find that at tiny.cc/FBAXPPR. We also have a newer group, the Atheist Experience fan group, Atheist versus Theist Debates, where you could try out some of your arguments, tell your stories, talk about bear attacks with theists and atheists alike. You can find that at tiny.cc/AXP fan debates. Jim, that's all I got that round.
Okay. Well, I don't think we're ready for this next one, but we'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
All right, Jay from someplace on the planet Earth, or Missouri, actually. Evil stuff atheists have done, because this is a show about whether or not God exists and not about evil stuff people do, because people do all kinds of stuff that are evil. How's that for an answer?
Well, would you rather live in a Christian nation that follows, laws, or an atheist nation, LGBTQ? What are they called?
I do not want to live in a Christian nation, and I'm doing everything in my power to fight against it, Christian nationalism, because I find Christianity and most of its people to be evil by the standard that I use, which is happiness of human beings. And part of that goes to denying that LGBTQIA people, let me finish or I'll mute you or drop you, because I'm about half ready to drop you as it is. So when it comes to that, we have plenty of evidence that they exist. The fact that your Bible doesn't claim they exist is just a problem with your Bible. There's lots of problems with your Bible. There are lots of things that are simply not true about it. And it makes most people to be very, very bigoted, very, very misogynistic. And quite frankly, I don't care if your God gets worshipped.
Well, actually, nowhere in the Bible it says that LGBTQ never exists. So you're wrong there.
Oh no, I'm not, because you know what? I can point to
anybody.
So here's the problem with what you just said. No, I'm going to respond to this real quick, because quite frankly, I don't care what your interpretation of the Bible is. I don't care what anybody's interpretation of the Bible is until they tell me how to actually interpret correctly 100% and everybody agrees on it. There are Christians who disagree with you on that and think that LGBTQIA do not exist and the Bible specifically talks against it. So guess what? I'm right. Now go ahead.
Right? That's called a homosexual. Not so you're saying homosexuals don't. Yes, it speaks against
according to the Bible.
But you're saying that Hitler, all the atheists, Mao.
Hitler wasn't an atheist. Hitler was Jed. So you're on mute. Hitler was not an atheist. Hitler was a Christian. Mao was an atheist, and and yes, what Mao did was evil. We've already covered that. People do evil, but nobody does as much evil as a Christian who thinks his God wants them to.
Jay,
you're off mute.
How do you think? Explain that purpose. Explain that point. Because
Jay,
you look at the Encyclopedia of Wars, about 1% has been religious wars, and not even half of them have been Christians. So you should do a little bit more studying about how evil atheists are.
Jay.
Oh wait,
I dropped him. Yeah.
Had so many questions.
Yeah. He's called before, and I just wasn't in the mood to deal with that kind of nonsense.
All good.
But the answer is people do evil things for all kinds of reasons. Give them the capital T truth, and they will do anything in that. Do atheists do all kinds of stuff? Yes, they do. Were most wars started for secular reasons? I don't think you can answer that question with a single reason for any war. You can cite a citing incident or an inciting incident that kicked things off, but in general, there's multiple causes that go into everything. But anyway.
Yeah, the thing, Jay, if you're still listening, and I hope you are, that you just think about this, okay? It's just you and me, all right? Nobody else is here, Jay. Look, atheists can do shitty things, as Jim said. Christians can also do shitty things, right? Like everybody on the planet is capable of doing shitty things. So, what does that tell us? About the origin of shitty things. It seems to just be a people thing, not like an atheist thing or a Christian thing. Atheists can do cool stuff too. Atheists can be generous and charitable and love their families and live great lives. Christians can do great stuff too, right? Religious people can do great stuff. So, but none of this has anything to do with whether the beliefs of any of these different groups of people are true. All right. You can do good things for bad reasons. There's so much work ahead of you, Jay, to make sense of this world that you find yourself in. So good luck.
Yeah. All right. Let's take Jody in DC, who wants to defend his God belief with metaphysics. You've got a minute. Give us your best argument and go.
All right. So essentially, I feel like, I've been discussing with atheists recently, just trying to get the worldview, and essentially, I see it as a paradigm of positive and negative thinking, essentially where atheists would be reductionists, materialists, following Nietzsche, and anybody else who believes in anything metaphysical or spiritual would just be believing in the world. So, I mean, we can expand upon it. That's just top level, because when I understand God, I understand it just as the universe being a principle of just energy and love and like light. No, not even love first. Let's just say light and energy and like the beginning. And then from there, you just get a bunch of stars. You know what I mean? So it's hydrogen.
No.
And then it goes to helium. What?
Keep going.
You said no? No, I was going to say it starts with stars.
So Big Bang, you get stars, they compress, you get solar systems. Out of that, when you look at when you examine things, now we have things such as like Mandelbrot sets and fractal geometry.
Okay,
And,
your minute is up, and you have completely lost me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Kenneth, did you follow that?
No, we didn't land on a point at all yet. But maybe like if you could just consolidate your point into, I know it's a minute. If you could just like very simply be like, I believe in God because, and then put something on the table, we could evaluate it. We could talk about it.
All right. I believe in God because I believe in like physics unifying on one sort of like principle, and like I don't know, there like being some sort of aspect of an ontological reality that would have to exist. And I think that there's like a source field that would underlie this, and there's also like an imaginative like sort of reality that is.
And do you have evidence for any of this?
Yeah.
Do you have evidence for any of this?
For sure.
Yeah. What if the properties of reality are what they are just because? And it's all just brute facts all the way down, and it just is how it is and couldn't be any other way.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do we rule that out?
Let's do this the other way, right? I think it's called like steel manning your argument. So you just are you like, first of all, is it a skeptical perspective or is it an atheist perspective? Are you approaching this from the, I don't like, one is scientific where there's no conclusion yet. It's just like, let's just look at evidence. The other one is like more of like looking with the null hypothesis of assuming the negative and like, no, there is none. We've already reduced it to like, what's up?
Jody, what is it? Because you referenced worldviews earlier. Let me just ask you real quick. What's atheism?
I would assume, so this is where I want to be true, right? This is where I want to be clear. I would assume agnosticism to be inconclusive, so you're just like on the fence. And then I would say that atheism is you taking the stance that there would be nothing existent beyond a material world.
No, that's not what it is. Yeah.
No.
Wow.
So this might be where we're getting kind of like derailed before the conversation can even happen. Because atheism is just, all you need to, for atheism is you're just not convinced that there's a God. There you go. You're an atheist now. You don't believe. That's it.
Yep.
But okay.
There's no world.
So you can say that, right? But
There's no. So here's the other part of your problem.
Yeah.
Theism is not a worldview. Atheism is not a worldview. Right. Theism you can break down into polytheism and monotheism, and you still don't have much of a worldview. We're starting to build one. Atheism, no such concept. Under monotheism, we could list Islam and Christianity and all of its varieties, and Judaism, and there's probably a couple others I don't know off the top of my head. Monotheism, there's a whole bunch. Now we're starting to be able to build worldviews. So there is no worldview with atheism. So as atheists, we build our worldview as we go because we don't have a single book or a single set of beliefs to work off of, which is part of the problem with the atheist community and why we have such a big tent.
Okay, so that's a fair assessment. That's interesting because now it's just like you almost put it as an atheist community, there is no foundation or no basis for anything. Like you guys, nobody knows anything. But when I'm saying that is,
wait, how do you get it? Nobody knows anything.
No. Yeah, I don't see how you got that from that, because the atheist community is the community of people who say they don't accept as true the claim that there is one or more gods.
Yeah, you can still know
That's
stuff.
the atheist community.
Sure, but okay. So let's be fair. Okay, so let's be fair with this, right? Can you both? So you both would be representative of the atheist community, or
no?
Are you? But
nobody nominated us. Yeah.
Yeah.
we speak for ourselves.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Fair enough. So, would you guys believe in like extraterrestrials?
Not without evidence.
Right.
Now, see, that's not an atheist perspective, right? So now you're asking us as individuals what we believe or don't believe.
Has
That's
nothing
a whole.
to do with atheism.
We want to make sure you understand. You're not asking about atheism anymore. You're asking about, for lack of a better word, alienism. And without evidence, no, I'm not going to believe that, because I am also, in addition to being an atheist, a skeptic. And oh, by the way, you can be a theist and a skeptic, and you can be a Christian and a skeptic.
You can you can be an agnostic theist too, since you brought up agnosticism earlier.
Yes,
shit's wild, man.
Mm-hmm. So my personal belief is I'm probably what you would consider a Gnostic theist. So you know what Gnosticism is?
Yes, you know that God exists.
Yes, pretty much. So
So
that's
how do you know that God exists?
Then,
Yeah.
so we could go about this a couple of ways, right? You want the old way, or do you want the like?
Pick
the
one.
universal
We don't
way?
care.
The best way.
Yeah, the best way. We've already spent a lot of time on this
right?
call.
Sorry. So me personally, like I'm of the African descent, so I would kind of trace my lineage back to Egypt. You know what
Aren't
I'm
we
saying?
all?
So when I think of, huh?
I said, aren't we all of
No, we
African
don't. We
descent?
all don't. No, we're not. Some people come from Ireland.
Well, I was looking back further, but okay, sorry. Don't let me derail you.
Yeah, he derailed. Yeah, let's not derail it on that one because. Yeah.
But that is the derailing. That is the thank you. Everybody thinks they're from Africa, but like everybody's not. Like some people are from freaking Ireland and stuff. So that's like going back to the Bible. You're looking at Egypt from the perspective of like Amenhotep and certain monotheistic Egyptian kings, and not really like it's like you can secularize it and be like
you know that Egypt predates the Bible, right? Egypt vastly predates the Bible.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
That's my point. Like I don't need the Bible. The Bible is like you have like the Enuma Elish in Babylon, and like you have Babylonian creation and Adama and Anunnaki.
Right.
So,
Why do you believe in God? Why do you believe in God?
I told you. I believe in once again, there's creation stories, there's the tree of life, there's the whole tree of life perspective of like the Kabbalah, and there's a basic root level, and there's a divine nine above that you kind of.
Okay,
you're not getting us any closer.
Yeah, you're not getting us. Yeah. See, the problem is that humans are two things. We are storytellers, and we like to explain things. And so that's how you get all these creation myths. It's not that they're all true. It's that we're storytellers and we like to explain things. Are there common elements? Yes, because we're human beings, and there are common things and common tropes that we like to hear as humans. So you're not getting anywhere with all these creation myths, right? Because they can't all be true.
Yeah. You said there's a God. How do we get there? You said there's a God.
Right, because I'm more so saying that I know that we have had like contact from different different entities.
How do you know that
aren't from this world?
How do you know that?
Well, so this would be getting into UFO phenomena and things like that are more evidential, that are easier to be skeptical of if you don't research it. So it's like you can just not know.
Yeah, so I have researched it, and I'm still skeptical. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't even know where the goalposts are at this point. Like,
yeah, we're wandering all over the place, and it's making less and less sense as we go.
Yeah.
UFOs.
UFOs have to do with a God?
Yeah.
Well, if you can't believe in freaking aliens and ESP and stuff, you're not gonna believe in God.
I'll believe in anything there's evidence for. Anything. There's fucking anything. So what's the evidence?
People who stare at goats. Have you seen that movie, The People Who Stare at Goats?
Yep.
Movies aren't going to cut it.
Yeah, I've seen that one. I've seen a lot of movies.
I'm just asking. Are you familiar with the concept of like, there's this like CIA Navy research of telepathic little remote viewing and stuff?
Are you going to start talking about Project Stargate?
Like dark.
Oh no.
Are we gonna start talking about?
And here's the problem. Every time somebody attempts to prove that they have some psychic phenomena, that they do something psychic, it's easy to debunk. It's so easy that Johnny Carson used to do it on a regular basis on his show. And it's so hard to prove that back when, I can't think of the magician's name now, I'm having a senior moment. The guy offered $1 million if you could
James Randi.
James Randi, right? Back when the James Randi Foundation was offering $1 million, nobody ever claimed it, and a lot of people tried. So, yeah, again, show us the evidence.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be more in studying like the etheric body and like the sort of, because you understand that your body is.
You're not. About, dude? Yeah. You've gone to a completely different subject. You've offered no evidence. You have one last shot. Evidence.
All right, I got it. All right, so yeah, you can shut it all down. It's cool. I know because I don't have time. I want to get on. Pretty much the whole basis is understanding like where you're. well, no, I'm saying understanding where your consciousness falls in your body, because obviously you would think it's deterministic.
It comes from the brain.
An emergent property
Anyway,
of the
what
brain.
you really should do instead of calling us, you should really call Truth Wanted Fridays, and call them. They're much more interested in this stuff than we are. So anyway, you have a good afternoon, and thanks for calling. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was, yep.
All right.
Okay. Well, let's take a moment to scrub our brains out and get rid of the weird.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's the perfect time for a brain scrub, because the ACA hosts several shows other than the Atheist Experience. We got Nonprofit, Secular Sexuality, Truth Wanted, Talk Heathen. And if you didn't catch all of these shows last week, here is a taste of the things you probably want to go back and watch.
You know, when is the right time to bring up that I'm bisexual?
For me, definitely not a first date thing, but a before you thing. And then if it's a problem for them, I'd be like, okay, well, you know, I hope you enjoyed your chicken parmesan and have a nice night.
Yeah, I understand. I need to have empathy, right? I need to have compassion for others, because that's what Jesus wants. But I can't accept your marriage as legitimate, or I can't accept that you're having sexual relations with this person is also legitimate. You know, it's like there's terms and conditions to your compassion.
Well, the 19th century, I'm going to do this in a particular voice. The 19th century is a strange time. Science was coming into its own. Religious people were starting to realize that perhaps the Bible may not be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
If I had a vision of, I don't know, Jesus, some really, really white guy with blonde hair, and this Jesus comes and says to me, you know, come and take my hand, my son, I would think, oh no, someone slipped some drugs into my yerba mate.
Let's go, Jim. He, him, and Idaho. What's your proof of God?
It's in the Bible and it says so.
Okay. You got us, buddy. You got us.
He was up for like 30 minutes for that.
You know, if it wasn't for troll callers sometimes.
Yeah.
Oh, that was a good one on David Forrest. So anyway, let's go on to Mohammad in the United Arab Emirates. Welcome to the show, Mohammad.
Hello, thank you. Hi, Jim. Hi, Kenneth.
Hey.
So
Okay,
you wanted to
can
talk
hear me
about how to answer your son's questions living in a Muslim country.
That's correct. So, as you know, from the where I live now, it's a Muslim country, but there are a lot of religions here. There's a good mix of religions. So my son is only 3 years now, but he's gonna go to school soon, and he's gonna see people from different religions, mainly Muslims. He's gonna come asking me questions, and I don't really want to tell him that these are all like BS, but at the same time, I don't want him to believe these things. So because he might be left out somehow, or people might not take it well if he says that, yeah, my dad told me that those are just BS stories and stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have a good answer for that for two reasons. One, I'm not a dad, and two, I don't live in your country, and I understand that that's very different than living here. I mean, I've got a degree of fear because I live in East Texas as an atheist, but I don't have the degree of fear that I think that you might living in the UAE. And I understand UAE is a little bit more liberal than some of its neighbors, but I think the best thing you could do is give them a framework to evaluate questions and answers himself. Would be the best piece of advice I could give you. Rather than give him answers, give him more questions and give him a way to think about things critically. Might be the better answer, but also explaining to him too the dangers of where you live and the environment you live in. But Kenneth, you got anything
My
better?
thought was, so I I'm not a parent yet, but I'm about 4 months out from having a kid. My wife's doing most of the work at this point, but I'll pick up my end more. But anyway, I was asked recently what I'm going to do about Santa, and how am I going to talk to my kid about Santa when they ask me if Santa's real, and I've thought about this, and I think that the best thing I can do is just to encourage them to investigate. So this is going hand in hand with what Jim was saying. It's to go, if my kid comes up and is like, hey, what's up with this whole Santa thing? To be like, hey, look, I'll tell you what, why don't we figure it out? We can crack the code. I'm sure you got friends in your school that are saying Santa's real, some who might not think so. Let's figure it out. And to make the process about methodology and about epistemology and not about me trying to hand feed them some sort of answer. You know what I mean? So it could be an opportunity, like Jim's saying, to just encourage your kid to seek out what's true, and then let those chips fall where they may.
Well, yeah, I do understand, of course, and that's what I'm planning to do. Like I want him to think critically, to be skeptic about almost everything. And I know you probably didn't have a good answer for this. It's just the society will expect, especially that my name is Mohammad. They'll know that his father's name is Mohammad. They'll expect him to be a Muslim. I now get this question like, have you taught your son Quran? Because his mother is also non-Arabic. She's from Ukraine, so they expect me to teach him and her Islam and Quran, and I don't tell people around me, like very few people know that I'm an atheist. So because people don't accept that, especially Muslims, they'll expect that, okay, his dad is Muhammad, he's gonna be a Muslim. So this is something that I'm thinking about. He's gonna have a lot of Muslim friends or in school and stuff, and I'm afraid that telling him to be skeptic about religion will cause people to somehow not even just criticize him, demonize him in a way.
Oh, it's right. Totally, that makes sense. It's justified. I mean, yeah, like Jim's talking about living in East Texas. I live in Kansas. It's not uncommon for people to be demonized, to be threatened, to have their rights violated or taken away because they don't believe the prevailing magical narrative that their neighbors believe, right? So yeah, I fully respect that this is a fear that you have. So it's going to become something that you're going to, I don't know what the answer is here. Just like Jim was saying, this is a very tough question.
Yeah. I think this would be easier for someone like Apostate Prophet to answer, and he was supposed to be on today, but couldn't make it, and so I'm substituting for him. But if you know who he is online, on his Twitter handle or his Facebook, I think he's mostly Twitter. I could be wrong about that. And contact him. There might be better resources in your area than two guys who live a world away in very, very different circumstances than you do, to help you out and figure this stuff out in good ways. Talking to people is always good, and he's probably got the contacts to be able to help you out with that. And so he might be occasionally on our Discord server, but definitely I would reach out to him online and see what he has to say in terms of more specific tactics, because that's the best we can give you is almost useless generalizations, unfortunately, and without understanding the culture.
There are a number of ex-Muslims from all over the world in the Facebook groups that we brought up earlier. So if you get plugged into, maybe the Atheist Experience private fan group and put yourself out there, there might be people who are willing to help you. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I do know, Apostate Prophet, and I've watched a lot of videos for ex-Muslims, of course, but most of them live currently outside of the Muslim society or Muslim countries, so it's easier for them to speak out. But I didn't expect to get an exact answer from you guys. I know that, but I just wanted to see what's your opinion about that. And thank you very much for giving me the time to do that.
You're welcome. And if you come up with any good answers, please call us back and let us know, because you're not the only atheist person living in a Muslim country who's got the same answers. And like I said, it's very difficult for us to give good answers. And if you come up with a good one and want to call us back and let us know, you're more than welcome to do that. We'd be happy to take that call.
Yes, definitely will do. I just have a couple of more topics that I want to speak. Talk about also, since I became an atheist. Like, I'm struggling with some things, but I don't want to take a lot of your time, guys. So I'll call again.
I'll tell you what, if you're
next week or after that.
if you're having issues, with recovering from religion, you might consider reaching out to. There's an excellent organization called Recovering from Religion that the ACA works hand in hand with all the time. And I'm sure the mods will put the links to RFR down in the live chat. But if you've got sort of residual religious issues going on, that's a phenomenal resource, RFR.
Mm-hmm.
I was not really religious before I became an atheist. Like, I was a believer. I was not really religious. So I don't, it's not causing me a lot of issues. I do wish, I've passed through some tough times recently, and I do wish that there was a God that you can either pray to get, to get your prayers answered, or to blame, at least when it's happening to you. That was one thing, but it's not a big deal. I still have an issue with the abortion, but that I know that's a long topic, so I'll probably call again and talk about that.
Okay,
cool.
I would love to hear from you again, Mohammad. Thank you for calling.
Will do. Thank you very much for your time, and have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye.
Well, should I knock out the last of these announcements here, Jim?
Yes, please.
All right, here we go. So, friends, we have a brand new store. Visit tiny.cc/merchaca to get your favorite items like t-shirts, hoodies, and coffee mugs. And check our brand new items like beanies, cell phone cases, and tote bags. We even now have feature a special limited edition item each month. Be sure to check out our store and all the stores of the other shows. Right below the chat, you'll notice there is a donate now box. Donations made there mean that the ACA will get 100% of the proceeds. Hey, that's all of them. YouTube does not take a cut, and that is the best way to support us. Finally, we want to send a big, sloppy, wet thank you out to the crew who put this show together every week. We love them. Can we get the crew cam up here to just love those? Look at these magnificent people. Wait, a Mets shirt? The hell was that?
I don't know.
A Mets shirt.
Some people like Mets.
That's true. It's a big tent in the atheist community, as you said.
It is, and some people like the Mets hockey team. So
it is even inclusive of the Mets and their fans. That's right.
I'm probably on some New Yorkers hit list for saying Mets were a hockey team. That's okay though.
I'm just playing around. I got nothing against Mets fans.
No, not at all. All right, or sports ball for that matter.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so let's take Rich in Georgia, who, well, I'll let you go ahead and answer your question, George.
Yeah.
Or excuse me, Rich.
Hey, guys. How's it going? Thanks for taking my call. My question is, let's just say hypothetically, when you die, you are in the presence of God and discover that Christianity is true and that you are cast into hell for all of eternity. Do you think that that would be fair?
Nope.
What would be the reasons for me being cast into hell? That would why would I be cast into hell? For me to evaluate whether it's fair or not. My sin?
Yeah, your sin.
Did the people in heaven sin?
Yes, but they've accepted Christ, and so their sins have been forgiven.
Oh, so it's not about the sin; it's about the belief.
Correct.
Okay.
We all sinned. That's Romans 3:23, right, or 6:23.
So
Romans 3. But the question then would be: so if these people have sinned and I've sinned, then the question is: would me being tortured forever because I didn't have sufficient evidence to justify a belief. Is that fair? And I think that that's pretty obviously no.
But that would be your interpretation of sufficient evidence. So
yeah,
some other sinner who believes that they have gotten sufficient evidence and they've repented and believed on Christ, those people would obviously receive heaven.
So is it just then? So if people are gullible enough to believe stuff, should they be in heaven forever, while those who had higher evidentiary standards be tortured forever? I think it'd be hard for you to make the case that that's just.
That would negate my original thing where I said it's true. So hypothetically considering that it's true, it wouldn't mean that someone would be gullible to believe the truth. It would be
No. The question of whether something's the question. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, it's gullible because they didn't have they accepted bad evidence as for something that is true. So it wasn't they had good evidence and made good decisions, they got lucky.
Yeah, the question of whether or not something is justified by evidence and whether it's true or not are two completely separate questions. Something could be true and I could just have no evidence to believe it, right?
True.
Right. So again, it comes down to a question of evidentiary standards. Should people with high enough evidentiary standards to not accept bad claims and lousy evidence, should they be tortured forever? I don't think so.
Even if it is true.
Yes.
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. If it's true, but I don't have any reason at all to believe it.
God, you would say that God failed to provide sufficient evidence.
Yeah, I'd be going, what the hell, man? and if God wanted to just torture my ass forever, that'd be his prerogative, and he'd be a monster. But yeah, like I don't have any reason to believe that the Bible's true.
Right. And considering that a lot of the arguments that are made, a lot of the arguments that are made for God didn't start with Christianity, right? They predate Christianity. Greek philosophers were using them to talk about the Greek gods, and they've been used to talk about other gods. So the arguments for a God, which God, the evidence for God is increasingly is getting smaller every day. That's why we call it God of the gaps, right? Because so many people are willing to say, I don't know, therefore God. We had a caller earlier today whose that was his example. I don't know how this could have happened, therefore something supernatural happened, God did it. And that's not good evidence.
And
you can't just say
listen to the whole episode, but
well, no, and you don't have to. It's just
for instance, or human history, there have always been people that believed in God. So the writings of the Bible are thousands and thousands of years old. So
people have always believed stuff. People believe things, but that has nothing to do with whether the things they believe are true.
Yeah, I mean, people believed in a flat Earth, and there are people who still believe in a flat Earth and round sun and round planets. So yeah. So that belief in something doesn't necessarily make it true, and that's what we're looking for is good, solid evidence that a God or gods exist.
And since you brought up Romans,
what you're saying is, if when you pass away, and if let's say hypothetically that it is true, and you stand before God, and God says, "Well, I gave you my word, I gave you my son, and you denied him." What would you say at that point? You would just have to say, "Oh, okay."
You gave us a book.
I'll tell you.
You gave us a book.
I'll tell you exactly what I would say. I would say there were. Hang on. I'll tell you what I would say. I would say, all right, look, you gave us this book, right? Made up of 66 other sub books, right? So you gave us this book. So irrelevant. All right. So you asked the question, I'm going to answer it. I would say you gave us this book, okay, that makes all kinds of metaphysical and spiritual and supernatural claims. And there was no evidence to believe any of it. There were these gospels that said that your son came and did all this stuff, and there was no reason to believe any of it. And then if I read further, Romans says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. It says the wages of sin is death. And then in Ephesians, it says, for by grace we are saved through faith and not of ourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest any man should boast. So if you knew, God, that faith was this necessary component that had to come to you, to my sinful ass, because I couldn't have it on my own, why wouldn't you give me either the evidence or the faith if you wanted to have a relationship with me, is what I would say.
Because of free will.
Bullshit.
He also gave you free will.
Yeah, that doesn't work.
No.
The devil has free will too.
And the people who God gives the gift of faith to, is he violating their free will by doing that? Did God violate Paul's free will when Jesus appeared to him on the road to Damascus, according to, the book of Acts? Come on. People pull this free will thing right out of their asses, and it has nothing to do with any of the stuff that I just said.
Yeah. And we could look at, Leviticus 14, where God attempts to give us a way to cleanse ourselves from defiling skin diseases, none of which would work except cleaning. Being clean might actually help in some cases, depending on what you cleaned your skin with, but nothing in Leviticus 14 is medically sound. So why would he give us something? I mean, why wouldn't he explain germ theory of disease or give us a set of chemicals that would actually clear up leprosy or some other skin disease rather than what he gave us? That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever.
But you do understand that the idea is that sin is what caused those skin diseases and any kind of death.
Yeah, except we have the germ theory of disease. So guess what? That doesn't actually do anything. And oh, by the way, the ritual is a cleansing ritual. And from what I'm reading here, the sacrifices actually happen after, or I don't know. Anyway, looks like the sacrifices happen after in celebration of the fact that they're now clean. But again, we have the germ theory disease. I can give you a disease at will just by exposing you to the right pathogen. So sin has nothing to do with it.
Yeah, Rich, let's cut to the chase, man. What's the evidence? Why should anybody care what the Bible has to say about anything? Right? And you can pick the gospel, pick the resurrection, pick whatever you want. Like, why should anybody care?
Well, people do care.
Why should they care? Was the question.
Where the majority of people do care.
So what? Why should people care? Was the question. So try to answer it. Why should anybody care about what the Bible has to say about anything?
So that they can go to heaven when they die?
Well, the Bible says that that's the key to heaven, but why should anybody care?
Because it's true.
Okay, that would be a great reason. Okay, so what's the evidence?
The book itself and the history.
No, the book's the claim.
And obviously,
what's the evidence? What the book is a collection of claims. What's the evidence to support the claim?
There's historical evidence that Jesus.
There's historical evidence that when you die, you go to heaven if you believe a certain set of claims.
Well, we can't really know that because nobody's ever come back from the dead except for, Lazarus and stuff like that. But
well, again, a book says Lazarus came back and Jairus's daughter, right? There's people who come back from the dead in a book, but why should anybody believe any of that shit? That's the question, man.
Well, what I'm saying is if you stake your claim on that, if you were to get to heaven, or if you were to stand before God and he says, okay, you accepted my son and you get into heaven, fantastic. If you deny all of that, then you go to hell. And so I'm wondering if that happens to you, are you going to be irritated with that? Are you going to be, fair?
Yeah, I'm going to be pretty annoyed. Let me ask you this. What is going to happen if you die and you get to the pearly gates and the angel Moroni is there and is like, we sent the message to Joseph Smith and your ass didn't convert. You weren't a Mormon. What the hell, man? We gave you the book.
Is that what
are you going to say?
I haven't really fully studied the Mormon religion, so I don't know.
What are you talking about? You haven't studied the Book of Mormon? Aren't you aware that people believe that is the final testament of Jesus Christ? How come you're not studying it right now?
just seems so obscure.
Well, who gives a shit about it? People believe it. People organize their lives around it. Yeah. Really, very polite, well-groomed people are gathering in temples as we speak with all of their kids, and they believe that Joseph Smith was a prophet. What happens if you get to heaven and heaven is full of Mormons?
Yeah, but if you look at the history of Joseph Smith, it's pretty obvious that he was a charlatan.
Oh, but God works through broken human beings all the time.
Noah was a drunk. Paul persecuted Christians.
Yeah. And you know, they'll leave that out.
David was an adulterer.
So when you look at the Bible versus the Book of Mormon, you hold them to be as equally just awful. Like you
no, not awful.
No.
And I wouldn't even say they're equally implausible. I would say the Book of Mormon is definitely less plausible than the Bible because it is the Bible plus a bunch of other unjustified bullshit. So yeah, it's just making extra claims. So that makes it even less likely to be true. But the bottom line is it's all equally unsubstantiated by evidence.
But the Book of Mormon doesn't have the same history as the Bible.
That is correct.
You know,
that has nothing to do with whether it's true.
Really,
the Bible doesn't have anywhere near the history that Zeus does, or the Egyptian gods do, or the Hindu gods do, the Vedas, right? So the fact that something's been around for thousands of years doesn't make it any more or less true.
Yeah, the other guy was talking about Anunnaki. That shit's in the Sumerian deities, right? That's older than the Bible. Not convinced, man. It's because it all boils down to evidence, right?
And the Bible is the claim, and there are a number of claims in the Bible that are demonstrably untrue. And some of the claims that you can, and some of the things that some people claim are true, other people claim aren't true. And the only way that I have been able to figure out who is right is to stack up the number of Bible verses, count them up, and whoever has the most Bible verses in support of their position might be more correct. And I don't think that is a good way to determine if anything is right.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's a good way to get to the truth of the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so do you think that there will be any inkling when you are like on your deathbed that you will potentially either be worried or just say like, well, here we go, we're going to find out. You know what I mean?
I won't even say, here we go. We'll find out, because I am really, really convinced that the odds of any God existing are so close to zero, it doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah. I had to really think about this a few years ago because, Rich, so a few years ago, my dad passed away, and he had Alzheimer's, and it was like a long thing. It was really terrible. And it was the first death that was really close to me since I had left Christianity. And I was thinking about it differently because it was the first time that someone really close to me that I loved died, and I didn't have any expectation that I was ever going to be reunited with this person. I didn't have any expectation they were going to an afterlife. It's just, that's it. Dad's gone. Someone asked me, where did your dad go where do you think your dad went when he died? And I was like, well, his ashes are in an urn in Riverside, California. That's where he went when he died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's pretty much it. You know, I've had brushes with death. I had two sort of nearly died when I was in the Army, 2 experiences, and you know, shit happens. But like, there's this myth of like, there's like the no atheists and foxholes thing, and that's just bullshit, because many of us, we really, really do, and I know this is hard for a lot of religious folks to wrap their heads around, we really do just try to proportion our beliefs to the evidence. So as we're laying there, as the clock is counting down, we're probably going to be spending more time just thinking about our friends and our family than wondering about the promise of some afterlife that's completely unjustified.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about your dad's passing, and
it's all good, man.
You know, was he a believer?
Yep.
Okay. And so, did you find any comfort in that at all, or?
No.
Like, you said you were a former believer, like. Was that just a hard stop? You know, like you're just like, You're not
No,
open at all to.
No. What happened was, so I'll tell this very, very briefly. So I was in the Army. I was going to a church in North Carolina where they were doing like a read through the Bible, Genesis to Revelation thing, and I just started asking questions about whether I really had good reasons to believe the stuff that I believed. And that was the pathway out of Christianity for me, was just recognizing, shit, I don't have good reasons to believe any of this stuff. And then I was just a theist. I was like, oh, but there has to be something out there. And I did that bullshit for a little bit. And then I realized, well, wait a minute, I don't have any reason to think that either. And I landed on atheism. And now here we are a decade later. Yeah. That's it, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious as to how people's minds work, especially when that goes, because, in fact, this is the third time I've called the show, and the last time I called, it was many years ago, but I did get into a conversation, I think it was with Jen, about the afterlife, and she said that atheists don't really have any firm stance on the afterlife. It's more about whether a God exists or not. So I understand that, but
you could be an atheist and still believe that there's like some sort of soul or some sort of other realm or some bullshit like that. Yeah, you could be like, there's no God, but I think there's an afterlife. You could do that, but you just wouldn't have any justification as far as I can tell.
Right. But my question, though, is just like, if it is true and you find this out, are you going to be pissed? Are you going to be like, well, I just, God provided some evidence, but it wasn't sufficient enough for me, so I made my choice, and I have to live with that. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't say pissed. I would say mortified, because I wouldn't be alone. There would be who knows how many millions of people who had been born in circumstances where they, believed a different religion or were atheists or whatever, and they didn't believe in the correct God, really through no fault of their own. They're still going to be accountable to this God and this sort of twisted narrative of eternal torture. So yeah, I think more than anything, I'm just going to be like, God, this is horrific. And that'll be that. I'll be powerless to do anything about it.
Yeah, I mean, I had that question or that line of thought, especially when I was in college and started learning about world religions and knowing that God is a loving God and being concerned with people that had grown up in a society that adopted a false religion. And I thought surely God would reveal himself to each individual in his own terms and their own terms. But then I read portions of the Bible that talked about how God curses generations even because of the sins of their forefathers. And unfortunately, that's just part of it,
Well, I mean, the good news is there's just no reason to think any of that stuff is true. But Rich, I appreciate the call very much. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and we're gonna move on to other homies. Jim, do you have any final thoughts on like what if?
Yeah, I kind of got one that was asked in chat that I'm kind of curious about. Let's assume for a moment that we have somebody who ends up with Alzheimer's and has no memory of them being a great Christian, however you want to define great, I don't care. They're a great Christian, they get Alzheimer's and they completely forget that they were ever Christian. They don't remember believing in God, and they can't remember anything for longer than 10 or 15 seconds. Does that person go to heaven because they no longer believe in God, technically?
I mean, gosh, depends on your soteriology. This brings up an interesting question, though, because I remember the last time I spent some time with my dad, I mean, he was gone mentally, and I sat with him. He was in an assisted living home, and I was at a table, and I put my hand on his arm, and I'm just talking to him. And when I first came into the room, he was kind of agitated, and he relaxed. He started smiling, and he ended up just kind of falling asleep in his chair. And a nurse came over and was like, "Oh, see, he knows it's you. Somewhere deep down, he knows it's you." And I know what she was trying to do. She's trying to tell me something comforting that'll make me feel nice. But there's no reason to think that my dad knew who I was at that point in time. And I didn't fire back at this nurse. I wasn't like, really, let's talk about epistemology. Like we didn't do that. It was just like, oh, yeah, have a good one. And then me sitting there going, I don't have any reason to think that. And there is the question that we get confronted with all the time as atheists of like, well, wouldn't it be better to believe the comforting thing? Wouldn't it be better to believe the thing even if you don't have evidence for it? And I don't think so. I just don't think that there's any justification for that. So anyway.
Yeah.
We got Mo people here. I'll tell you what. Do you have anybody in particular that looks interesting to you, Jim?
Yeah, I think Michael actually looks interesting. So
let's do it. Boom. Bringing Michael up. How you doing, Michael?
How you guys doing? So yeah, I was calling because I'm sort of in a place where, I've called before. I'm sort of in a place where I'm like deconstructing my faith. Being a Seventh-day Adventist Christian for most of my life. I'm 32 years old now. So basically been a Christian for most of my life and a skeptic for like, 4 years maybe. So nonetheless, the thing I'm calling for is perhaps just to see if I can get you guys' perspective on some things, because when I am listening to a lot of different biblical scholars and the skeptical podcasts and whatnot, like Myth Vision or Gnostic Informant, I suppose YouTube just starts recommending me also apologist videos and stuff like that. So I came across one particular apologist. I think his name is Eric Manning from from Cross Examined or whatever that ministry is called. And there was a video I saw that sort of piqued my interest. I suppose it was he was interviewing a professor from Biola University named J.P. Moreland, and Moreland was giving a testimony, if anything, about 3 different instances where other people said that they saw angels around him, right? They said that they saw these 3 angels, they're like 2 on the side of him, 1 behind him. The one behind him was really tall, and the 2 on the sides were, a little bit shorter, but nonetheless tall figures. And the thing, I suppose, that was just intriguing about it was the fact that these 3 people, at least according to Moreland, didn't know each other. They weren't, so they weren't colluding with each other to make this story up. Because Moreland didn't see the angels himself, but these 3 people, in each in different instances, saw these, they described it the exact same way. 2 on the side, 1 behind, the one behind is really tall, yada, yada. So, Eric Manning, he posted that video, that snippet of the interview he did with Moreland, as saying, like, oh, this is like really strong evidence for the existence of angels because, you got 3 separate witnesses all attesting to the same thing. And I suppose the thing is, what I'm getting at is when I see testimonies like that, is that I'm only imagining because of the fact that I was raised Christian for most of my life, right? Like I said, I'm 32 years old, most of my life I've been raised Christian. That when I see stuff like that, it immediately has like a stronger grip on me, I suppose, because of the psychological conditioning of my childhood and adolescence and whatnot. But at the same time, it's like I'll just be straight up, where I want to dismiss it. The thing is, I feel like in doing so, I feel like I'm almost being unfair, like I'm flippantly dismissing it. And I'm like, plugging my ears and saying la, 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 so I don't hear.
Oh, yeah, don't do that. Because that's not skepticism.
Right.
So wanting to dismiss it is not skepticism. That's cynicism. It's different.
Yeah.
Right.
The best you can do is say, and you've probably heard us, if you watch this show, you've probably heard multiple hosts say, I accept what you're saying is true. I just don't agree with your conclusions. And that's not dismissing what the person said. I don't know what they actually witnessed. Just because I can think of half a dozen or more perfectly secular reasons for what they saw doesn't mean that any of those are true either. And so we can't dismiss the personal experience. But what we can do is simply say, well, I don't know how you can prove what you saw is true, right? You'd have to have them hold up a sign or something, and or there's all kinds of things you could do to test it, but we can't do that now. And so you don't dismiss it. You accept the claim as what they're saying is true. You just don't draw the same conclusion. And that's probably you have to do one of the hardest things to do as an atheist, which is say, I don't know. And again, that's not dismissing the claim. That's just saying, I have no idea if the claim is true or not. Or if I would even come to the same conclusion or not.
Yeah, and think about that. depending on what part of the world you're in, I guarantee you could find you find more than 3 people who will talk about seeing angels, and they will agree on what they look like, and it will be different than the descriptions you're getting from these other 3 people. And if you go to different parts of the world, I guarantee you there are people in America who think that, they've seen a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Jesus, and you could probably find dozens of people who've seen this. If you go to another part of the world, they might have seen, an atheist, a Jesus that looks very, very, very different, right? So the question is, take people at their word when they tell you they've had an experience. Sure, okay, fine, you had an experience. What can we know about the nature of that experience, though, based on what you're telling us? What can we know about the causality of that experience? What influences have affected your perception of this stuff?
Right. Because one of the problems I have with most people's description of angels is they are not biblically accurate. There is a reason why when angels come into contact with human beings in their true form, the first words out of their mouth is "Be not afraid." These are not what we normally think of as angelic, beautiful beings of great peace. They're much, much different if you go look at what the Bible actually describes angels as being, when they're not masquerading as humans, right? Because we got a couple instances of them masquerading as humans. And so, that's a big part of it too, is they're seeing what they expect to see based on the mythology they've been taught. And the mythology of current Christianity is that angels are perfect human beings, and they're beautiful and they're quote unquote angelic, for lack of a better description. They're not covered in wings and eyes. They're not all these other descriptions that we have of angels in the Bible. And so which of these is accurate, I don't know. But if you're going to believe in angels that are in the Bible, most of our depictions aren't that.
Well, I would encourage you to check something out, Michael, because this might be interesting to you in light of this conversation we're having, which is check out how people describe their UFO alien encounters. Okay. And so when you go back and hear, you can find people back in like the 1930s and 40s talking about that they were abducted by aliens, and they'll talk about what the aliens looked like. And then look at how different it is in like the 50s and 60s. Now they'll start talking about like little green men. Then when movies come out where aliens look different and the pop culture perception of aliens changes, now the descriptions change because it maps onto the cultural context, like what Jim was talking about. I would check out how people talk about their experiences with aliens, and spoiler alert, you're going to find lots of people who don't know each other, have never met each other, telling similar stories. But do we have good reasons to think that what they're saying is true?
And the release date of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Close Encounters. That movie is a seminal moment in UFOlogy. Before then, you never see grays being described. And after that movie, that's pretty much all we get. All aliens are little gray guys. And Stargate did not help with that. But and so you can even just look at alien descriptions and alien ship descriptions prior to and post Close Encounters.
Yeah. And Roswell too, before that, with flying saucers versus other types of aircraft being described.
Yep.
Right. Because the thing is, like I was saying, is that a lot of times the thing that, well, actually I didn't mention this earlier, but I'm mentioning it now, is that the difficulty that I have a lot of times in seeing the words of a lot of different apologists or fundamentalists, because I was raised fundamentalist, is that the things that they say, they tend to like have like this sort of like bypass circuit in my mind, I suppose, in terms of gripping my emotions, like where I'm like, now I'm like, I guess I need to say I'm afraid, like, oh my God, like, is it, maybe it really is true and everything. Because a lot of my skepticism started just when I started thinking about, well, what reason do I have to believe that the Bible is particularly special amongst all the other different mythologies that are out there? In other words, why do I think the Bible is true? And when I started asking that question, I started my mind opened up to a lot of the different textual criticism of the Bible and whatnot. Like I would say a little bit more recently in my skeptical phase, if you will, I came across this Vision podcast where I came across Bart Ehrman and Dr. Francesco Savlakopoulos and Richard Carrier and all these other different people that it's sort of their work, at least for me, revealed the pronounced humanness of the Bible, and sort of dispelling the idea that it's some sort of divinely inspired, magnus opus of God. But when I hear these stories of supernatural events in modern day and contemporary times, that tends to always, like, if anything, it tends to like grip me or stop me in my tracks, where I'm just like, oh, it's not. Maybe there's something to this. And I suppose I always try to find ways to address that without being intellectually dishonest, without because, like you said, cynical. I don't want to be doing cynicism.
Right.
So I don't know. Is there? Would you say there's any? Probably a really big question to ask, but is there any, like, I don't know how to say this, method or epistemological mechanism that one could employ to challenge these things without, I don't know, losing all sense of confidence in, I don't know, one's way of thinking? I'm not sure if I'm even going about this the right way. Because
so yes, there's a number of ways to go about it. And I think one of the better ones, if you're having conversations with people, is street epistemology. And there are a number of folks who do on YouTube who do really, really good tutorials on epistemology, and they do really, really good examples of that. So they go out and they talk to people using the principles of street epistemology. I think that is also really, really good. And there's some actual techniques and some actual things that they do, strategies that they're employing, but mostly what you're doing is asking questions. And I think that sums it up the best, is to ask more questions than you make statements. Because then, I tend to avoid trying to get too deep into the Bible most of the time. I think sometimes it's good to look at particular things, but I don't want to get into a Bible quote off either. So, and while I'm fairly well versed in science, I try to avoid getting too deep into the science, because now I have to go and do research to go and prove things, but really ask questions about what they believe and why, which is basically what we do here. And I think part of it too is to really just kind of get comfortable with, I don't know, and stopping there, because that's a full sentence. I don't know is a full sentence, and that is a perfectly good answer to any question. I don't know. And I'm not going to believe that until I have sufficient good evidence. And then you can have criteria on the evidence. Is the evidence testable? If it is testable, the most important test is it falsifiable? If you can't falsify it, then the evidence is questionable at best. And then what is the source of the evidence? You can look at source methodology and where does it come from? If it comes from a peer-reviewed paper in a prestigious journal, I'm much more willing to accept that with a higher degree of confidence than I am anything in the Bible, because the Bible is not peer-reviewed. It is not creditable in so many ways that you have to take almost everything with a grain of salt until you go and actually research it. And so, being able to say, I don't know, is a huge piece of it, but also realizing that while it is true that an event, a phenomena, is either supernatural or natural, just because we can't prove it natural doesn't automatically mean it's supernatural, unless you can eliminate any ability of science to come up with an explanation. And I don't think you can do that. And that goes back to the lightning question. Lightning at one time was unexplainable and therefore was in the realm of the gods. Now we can explain it. Do things just automatically somehow switch from being supernatural entity phenomena to natural phenomena? That doesn't make any sense. So, just kind of accepting those and reminding yourself of those over and over again until your brain gets it. Because you spent most of your life hearing these things are true and programming yourself to accept those as true, essentially. And now you got to do some work.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part for any atheist.
With respect to the claims that you hear that sort of like ring a bell in your formerly theistic mind, right? Like you're talking about the angel thing. The reason I brought up aliens, I'm wondering, when you heard me talking about aliens, you're aware that people claim to have been abducted by aliens and probed and all kinds of crazy shit, right? You don't. When you hear those stories, you're not compelled to believe them, are you?
No.
So the reason why I'm bringing all this up is the way that you're reacting to somebody's alien abduction story is exactly the same way someone who hasn't been indoctrinated in Christianity reacts to the angel stories, right? So there's something called the outsider test for faith. If I were you, I would check that out. And along with the street epistemology component, along with asking lots of questions, being comfortable with admitting what we don't know, thinking about how the faith looks to an outsider is huge. When you talk about reading the Bible and seeing what a obviously human creation that book is, I'll tell you, when I was recently not a Christian, I took a class in college on the Quran and read the Quran, and I remember reading it. And I was the only non-Muslim in the class, and everyone else in the class is going, "This is like a perfect book. It couldn't have come from anywhere but a God." And I'm reading it, and I'm going, "This is just completely unimpressive. Like this is whatever." And they couldn't understand how I could read this book and be like, "Yeah, okay." And in the same way that when I was a Christian, when I was reading the Bible, I was like, "Oh, this is great." And then it's the second I'm out of it. I don't know why I turned into Jordan Peterson for a second there. But it's, when you're not indoctrinated in the religion, it looks like the alien abduction stories do, man.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, then cool. Appreciate it, fellas.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah. Thanks.
Have a good one.
All right, you too. All right, I think that pretty much brings us to the end. I did kind of want to address a caller that we dropped on the question of atheists, babies are atheists. I consider that to be the same question as rocks are atheists, and I have zero interest in that topic. It just makes no sense to me. But anyway, that's why we didn't take that particular call. If anybody was watching or wondering, and was expecting that, no, we're less interest on that. Any final thoughts there, Kenneth?
No, just I would say, to anybody who wants to check out the latest for what's happening with the ACA, visit our website, atheistcommunity.org. It's atheist-community.org. And feel free to contact us at tv@atheist-community.org as well via email if you've got questions, comments, complaints, concerns. We're open for business. So yeah, but it's always a pleasure getting to hang with you, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to the next time, Kenneth.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
It's time to get sexy, so watch Secular Sexuality Live Thursdays at 7 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTSS and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callsex.